of This Week in Politics. I hope everyone had a magical week. I certainly did, and it definitely made sure that I had a lot on. Next week is no better. It is jam-packed full of work and research, and I might have a new lead story. But more on that as the night goes on. I want to welcome everyone. If you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're regularly here, welcome all the same. So there's a couple of new things that I want to go through. This week had this unusual dynamic of people deciding that they were going to travel to Canberra, and I suppose not only were they going to go there, they were going to make sure that they were heard. They also got a lot of pink eye and embarrassment. They were told what they could and couldn't do. They had to be given rules. They were told you couldn't abandon your children or dogs, because adults need to be told that, right? Some of them forgot their big boy panties, apparently, and forgot where a toilet was. So I think that this is a sign that even when the very worst people rocked up to Canberra and decided this was the protest that they were going to attend. I have seen many protests over the many, many years. I've never seen them decide, hey, not only are we going to camp here, but we're just going to crap anywhere. That's the basic instinct of what they did. Amazingly, at this point, no one's been seriously injured. But apparently they've been dispersed now, and there's another one due on March 29th. Yes, you heard that live, people. They're going to be this stupid again, because doing it once wasn't enough. I mean, they have to have a few weeks from getting around in the middle of a pandemic, and now they got pink eye and whatever else. So they're going to need a bit of time to, get a bit of R&R. Can't trot around like you're all awesome and with awesome pink eye. I'm sorry, I can't. I was serious right up until that point. Come on. There was really a public notice to say, hey, if you got kids, kind of don't abandon them. I'm not sure what you do with that. What do you do with that detail? Do you just sort of go, they couldn't be talking to possibly me? No, they were talking to everyone. It was clearly a big enough problem that they labelled rules. Oh yeah, and go to the bathroom. In a bathroom. How are we at this point where we de-evolve to, hey, find a bathroom and watch your kids? Wow. So there's that. I think I've dragged that one out about as far as you can kick a can down the road. Let me know how your week was in the comments, and I'd love to hear from you. But first up, so Victoria is looking to change the law on sex discrimination. Now, this is a huge deal. But if you ask Matthew Guy, he's going to turn it into something horrendous. Now, this stuff means something. When I'm like, hey, what do what does it mean to the average Victorian? So Victoria decriminalises sex work as bill passes. Victoria has passed legislation to become the third jurisdiction in the nation to decriminalise sex work, ending a decades-long wait for advocates. Following the hours of debate on Thursday, the upper house voted 24-10 in favour of the bill, the repeal of offences, criminal penalties for consensual sex work between adults. just want to make sure you guys can see, because I've looked at it on the phone and I can't see crap whenever I do this. There were cheers and applause in the chamber when the final vote was confirmed. The Sex Work Discrimination Act 2021 will partly abolish street-based sex work offences and associated public health offences, remove the licensing system, and move to regulate the industry through existing agencies. It is also to strengthen anti-discrimination protections, making it unlawful to deny sex workers accommodation. See, now, the fact that that even existed is a problem to me. Like, we can all pretend like this is like par for the course or whatever, but this is the sort of work that you don't just go into it because it's fun. This is typically a job you do when you need quick money fast. I have met people in this industry, wonderful people. There's a lot of drugs and alcohol that are typically involved, and a lot of mental health needs to sort of work in amongst these groups. But all in all, I think decriminalising this wasn't just a good move, it was a solid move. Not just for the workers, but typically they have families too. It also strengthens anti-discrimination protections, making it unlawful to deny sex workers accommodation. I didn't know that you could do that. New South Wales and the Northern Territory decriminalised sex work in the 1995 and 2019 respectively, with Victoria drawing on their legislation. This means there are a fair few states that need to bump up their legislation around this. You never ever hear of this industry getting the support it needs. Reason Party leader Fiona Patten, a former sex worker who led the Victoria's review on decriminalising the industry, said she'd been fighting for the reforms for 40 years and that they were long overdue. And I have to agree. You can't look at this as some sort of, well, something that wasn't deeply needed. Even though we don't see it and we're not amongst it in every aspect, there are people who are. And I'd love to protect these people. The conversations that I've had with the people in this industry, it's not great. And if we can make any part of their lifestyle safer, that I'm all for it. This bill is for everyone who has been working under the draconian laws that have not protected us, she said during the upper house debate. They haven't protected the people in the industry, the sex workers, the brothel owners, the managers, and the receptionists. See, imagine just rocking up to work like an everyday job. And normally, you would have that bit of protection. This sort of has this feel to it where no matter what you did, they could make sure that life was a bit rough for you. That's not a life I'd want for anyone I know, and God forbid if anyone ever that I personally am related to enter this industry, I would want them protected. You have to think of a law like someone you know could be affected by it. And if you're thinking, I wouldn't know anyone that does that, you don't know, because quite often they keep it a secret. You just don't know. Sex work law reform Victoria spokesman Matthew Roberts described Thursday's vote as a momentous day for sex workers. The number one benefit for sex workers is that we no longer have to fear the police if something goes wrong at work. Now, this is an important highlight because typically what happens is the police will be called, something will go wrong, and then the police will typically ticket the sex worker and not the actual offender, which it's a very odd situation. Fellow advice advocate Dylan O'Hara acting manager at the Vixen Collective, has been pushing for Victoria government to remove some of the criminalisation of the street-based sex workers, but voted down an amendment from the Animal Justice Party, Andy Medic, to stop the bill, creating a new offence preventing sex work from being carried out in public areas, such as school, care services, places of worship, between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. and on holidays. Mr. Medic said it went against the spirit of the bill, but Government Services Minister Sean Leanne said it would act as a comfort to the community. Another amendment destroys records of past sex work offences as soon as practicable after the repeal was defeated. And can I say congratulations to Victoria for this win. It is in a win for those previously convicted of sex work. Gave the government pledge that their records would be destroyed in line with existing legislation. Now here's where it gets funny. Now I don't mean funny as in haha that's funny. I mean haha as in oh my god he's stupid. Okay, when I read this, understand I'm going to need to adjust that better. When I read this part out of what Matthew Guy did, Grace Tame first claimed that she and Peda had sex between 20 and 30 times. Now claims it was nearly every day for 6 months. Both stories cannot be true. Now that's a claim I haven't heard. I would like more details on that. You can either pop it in the comments or you can put it on the group thing and I can go through it later. That's up to you. I think that is going to be an interesting discussion. Because I think it's important to highlight what people claim and how they claim it. And if a story does change, it does need discussing. I do agree with that particular moment if there really was two conflicts in the story from the same person. As far as I know, Grace Tame is pretty incredible, and up to now I haven't heard anything negative about her. So I'd like to have that hashed out properly. I do have later on in the show, I do have a Grace Tame story. So if you're interested in that, stick around and hopefully we'll hear more from you soon. Okay, be careful about what I'm about to read out because I really should have like a trigger warning banner because this is how bad this is. Opposition leader Matthew Guy suggested if the bill passed, it would open up every suburban street and every suburban house to be a brothel. Because that's how sex work works, right? You're just gonna let them in your living room in front of your relatives. No, typically how this happens, it's at an establishment somewhere. And it's not like, this isn't like this dirty little thing that goes on. It's clean, it's sanitized quite often. They're women that go through regular screenings for diseases and all that other kind of thing. What Matthew Guy is doing is he's pulling the rabbit out of his hat trick. It's really a nothing burger kind of comment that they throw out, and it's damaging to these people. And understand, this is not unless you've spoken to the women that do this. Typically women, there are men who do it, but unless you've spoken to them, I doubt we're in a position to go saying how safe or unsafe it truly is, or to pass any judgment on what they do. Scarlet Alliance Chief Executive Jules Kim said the intent of decriminalisation was not to introduce specific laws for the industry. Just before I go on, the Adelaide Crows highlights commenter. Here's the thing. I definitely want to have a better conversation with you, because the more I'm thinking about it, I think that you might actually show me some things. The more I'm thinking about it, I actually wouldn't mind a conversation with you, because any new information is good information, and I think that that's part of how we should share things, and that's part of my job. Okay, Scarlet Alliance Chief Jules Kim said that in the intent of decriminalisation, it was not to introduce specific laws for the industry. There were already frameworks in place for businesses, and it's about treating the sex industry business as a business, she said. The bill will now return to the lower house to be rubber stamped before being sent to the Victorian government. Its first batch of reforms scheduled to come into effect May 10 and rest in December 2023, including repealing Sex Work Act 1994 in full. So that is an interesting story, but I think it's going to come up that Matthew Guy will say anything ridiculous, even if I think it's like a headline grabber that he does to sort of go, look at me, lobster man hands. So I really want to make sure that we go through and discuss how that would work when this does come into effect. So that'll be a later conversation. But next we have the Grace Tame and Bittany Higgins speech. So I don't know why it looks like that. Okay. I don't know if I hit the sharing the screen part. Of course I didn't, because why would I have done the correct thing? Okay. So there was 9 key moments from this Sellout Press Club event. The 2021 Australian of the Year and the Liberal staffer who triggered Parliament's Me Too reckoning did not mince words while putting politicians on notice. Grace Tame and Bittany Higgins wielded considerable cultural power when the National Press Club agreed to host a duo for a joint address on Wednesday. There was a stampede for ticket. The event was a sellout. Tame, a former Australian of the Year and survivor advocate, and Higgins, a Liberal staffer who triggered Parliament's Me Too movement, did not mince words, and here's some key highlights. This stuff matters, because I think what's going to come up later is that these women stood up when it became almost an untenable situation to their personal being as people. And I think that these women aren't just grandstanding. I think they've got a really good message, and I enjoy hearing what they say. Okay, an unwelcome August phone call. Tame, who fought for the right to tell her own story, knows how to hold the attention of a room. On Wednesday, she revealed she received a threatening phone call from a senior member of government, a funded organisation who asked her not to reflect negatively on the Prime Minister, with an election coming soon. In the context of Tame being roasted for giving the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, some robust side-eye at the function at the Lodge in January, the anecdote was quite a mic drop. Wednesday's claim triggered an immediate investigation by the government. And a statement from Morrison's office that the Prime Minister would not, excuse me, would not and had not authorised any intervention that nature. Journalists, being journalists, wanted more information. Tame didn't intend to elaborate. In response to the inevitable who, what, when and where inquiry, she said, I reckon if I was willing to name either, I would have put them in the speech. Can tell you what you said back to that person. Nope, it doesn't matter now, does it? Don't be Scott. Don't think even Scott wants to be Scott right now. Tame and Higgins fielded a number of questions about whether they plan to enter politics or into the election campaign fray. The answer was no. Higgins said it in a tribal term. She was stateless. Tame had said former Labor leader Kim Beazley did try to sway me. But at one point she also winked at the Labor leader Anthony Albanese, who was watching on the audience. But it was still no. In other words, Albo treated her with respect, but she still declines the offer, which is fair enough. You don't have to enter politics to be, recognised for your work in this field. If you remember, Rosie Batty also copped a blistering hammering from Tony Abbott and others, and they were horrible to her. And I think that that's really, really, really telling, that every time a woman says something, they're like, nope, shouldn't be allowed to do anything, she shouldn't be able to respond. And I mean, I think that that's so telling, the moment that there is a lot of history of when women stand up and say, no, we're not tolerating that. There's this instant rebuke of her, like she should have just accepted it and laid down and took it. No, can I say, truly, if you want women to stand up and smile, give them a reason to do it, and they'll do it. If you're going to treat them like crap and give them a reason to be cranky at you, they're not going to smile for your weird photo op, Scott Morrison. It's weird. Stop it. And Albo and her just sort of did this one photo together, I think, and I think it was nice. I think it was Albo's way of saying, I feel for what you're doing. I feel like I can achieve more outside of politics, which you probably can. Rosie Batty did too, and the way she was treated was horrendous by the Conservatives. Tame was asked about whether she could nominate for some things that Albanese could do better, and what would it mean if Australians chose to vote for Scott Morrison back in. Tame waited for half a beat before returning the serve. All Anthony would have to do is none of the things Scott Morrison has done. Now, isn't that telling how damaging Scott Morrison is, where people have to enter the political arena and then say, what Scott Morrison is doing does damage. Not just does damage, does it in a monumental way. That means something to a lot of people. It wasn't a march for language. Higgins spoke out about her determination to drive change. She referenced the public rallies last year, women marching for justice around the country. Last year wasn't a march for acknowledgement. Higgins said it wasn't a march for coverage. It wasn't a march for language. It was a march for justice. And that justice demands to be real in our laws, real change in our laws, as well as in our language, in our national culture, as well as in our national conversation. That starts with the Prime Minister. Yes, some of his language last year was shocking and at times admittedly a bit offensive, but his words wouldn't matter if his actions had measured up then or since. Higgins said that Morrison's comments after her allegations of sexual assault became public last year, that his wife had encouraged him to think about his own daughters when were misplaced. I didn't want his sympathy as a father. I wanted him to use his power as a Prime Minister. And dude, we're not looking at you as like some weird daddy cultured weirdo. We're not looking at you as some sort of religious zealot. We're looking at you to be the Prime Minister of our country. So when a woman comes up and says, hey, this is an issue, let's deal with the issue. Right? And she's clearly saying, do something. she's not saying as a daddy or as a weirdo conservative that makes these weird sort of statements. She's saying do something as the damn Prime Minister. I wanted him to wield the weight of the office and drive change in the party, our parliament, and out of the country. And 1 year later, I don't care if the government has improved the way that they talk about these issues. I'm not interested in words anymore. I want to see action. Is sorry the hardest word? For the Prime Minister's office, yes. Typically, it doesn't apologise for anything that it does wrong. On Tuesday, the presiding officers and political leaders acknowledged the pain for many former political staffers subjected to bullying, harassment, and worse. Given she had been the catalyst for that parliamentary apology, how did Higgins feel when that moment ultimately came? It was deeply emotional in a way that I wasn't anticipating. I think about being in that room kind of made all the difference. It made so much more tangible. Not just the people, as you know, flattened the characters on TV screen like I've watched most of the year play out. He's built like a, during a question about whether cultures and the consequences made people safer, one journalist referenced a question she previously asked Morrison about what he had done to make Parliament safer today than it was 12 months ago. Tame's brow furrowed. I do love that part where you asked the Prime Minister if he thought it was safe for workplace. Because he's about 6'3", and my understanding he's built like a, probably a bit safer for him. What about every other workplace in the country? Parliament did have that huge scandal where they were using that room and they were doing, apparently there was a couple of orgies. Look, it's not a word I like to use. It's funny now, but wait until one of your kids uses that word. And I'm telling you, that's why I don't like the word. Because if I can't handle my kids using that word, I have an issue saying that word too. Because can you imagine like this tiny little mouth coming at you saying that word? It's just no. Just no. I'm doing it wrong. Okay. Higgins has been the catalyst for reforms in the toxic workplace culture in Parliament House. But as she asked on Wednesday about the rest of the country, Higgins noted that the government was following the advice of Australia's Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Kate Jenkins, when it came to workplace reform to Parliament. But the government had ignored Jenkins' advice to impose a positive duty on employees and keep their employees safe from sexual harassment. I'm shocked that it was not more flashpoint moment for people. Higgins said imposing a positive duty would have impacted every single working woman in the country, and we just kind of let that moment slide by without thinking. Now, that's an important part. It's not just about what happens in the big Canberra bubble. This is about what happens to you when you want to go to work. Look, I know most of you have, if you're a woman, you've experienced someone just thinking they can say whatever they like. If you're a man, you've experienced people making comments about how you are and what aspects you need to have to be a man. So this culture that we have in demeaning people based upon how they look, what they wear, or how we should interact with them in a workplace does need to change. Mostly for women, but it does happen to men. And it happens quite a bit actually. There was one meeting I was unfortunately stuck in where a man was really rudely dressed down about what he wore, how he spoke, how he stood. And it basically was like a, don't come to work unless you looked their certain way. It wasn't about a uniform or anything. It was more about just attacking him as a person that should look sexually charming, and it was gross. It was really gross. I'm out reporting it. Aspirational statements won't cut it. Higgins also took aim at the national plan to reduce violence against women, at one point holding a direct eye line with Liberal ministers who were its architects. The national plan doesn't aim low, she said. Unfortunately, aims so loftily and vague that it's impossible to disagree and equally difficult to examine. But the question is, how will it be achieved? That is unfortunately where the draft plan has lost its way. Instead, it's largely a collection of statistics and describing a problem filled with warm sentiments and platitudes attached to the noble outcomes and which lacks the promised learnings from the past decade towards a future free from violence against women and children, and clear targets at the end. Without clearer action, firm targets, there can be no accountability. Now, this stuff means something. I want people to understand that the Morrison government will never do anything that will mean anything to any meaningful change. Every time they've had an opportunity to be a decent human, they fail every time. There is a lot of work to do in politics surrounding how laws are drafted. I think no matter which side of the aisle you sit on, you do believe that more can and should be done. But the Morrison government definitely needs to have a talk about it. I mean, I remember Tony Abbott saying things like women do the ironing and this is why I'll make energy costs low. It was just a ridiculous thing. Like, they make sexist, out of reach, out of touch comments, and it's repugnant to its core. Is Parliament doing enough to protect the rights of vulnerable people? Tame and Higgins were asked about the current parliamentary debate about the religious discrimination. Was enough done to protect the rights of the LGBTQ community students? Tame was short and sharp. No, she said. Why does one group of people have more right to be themselves than another? That's what I have to ask the government. Higgins was worried about the well-being of young people. Can't imagine how they would be feeling to have to listen to this play out right now. I really have nothing to lose. Tame gave a sharp summary of what it's like to be commodified by the media. It was like to have your objectives lost in the translation. Certain members of the media have consistently labelled me as politically divisive, failing to mention that I spent most of last year having frank, productive meetings with politicians on all sides about the state and federal level. So after a year of being re-victimised, commodified, objectified, sensationalised and delegitimised and gaslit, thrown under the bus by biased mainstream media, and despite my inclusive messaging, I would like to take this opportunity to take a glass of water and remind you I really have nothing to lose. And I think that there says everything we need to know. There's so much work that needs to be done. We're not going to waste any time trying to debate it with people that aren't being in good faith in this space. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that we're in a position like no other. We have this Prime Minister right now trying to push this religious discrimination bill. We have him hiring part of the religious sects into his cabinet. We have him using QAnon staffers for his wife. So this isn't new. I want to tell you that this is new, but it's not. It's absolutely not. But I think the next thing that we're going to need to talk about is something a little bit more insane. So, the 60 minutes moment. I think most of you did not catch it and were not interested in catching it. Me, no. I wouldn't catch some weird puff piece of the Prime Minister. But why did the Prime Minister feel that this was going to be his moment to talk about that? And I mean, what did he think was going to happen when he did it? It was a weird thing to do. What was that? And I think that when we look at it on a whole, we're going to have a conversation that says, why is Peter Costello still on the board of 9 and doing these weird puff pieces for the Prime Minister? It's weird. Stop it. It's strange. Okay, so check this one out. Oh, don't know if you can hear that. Nope, you definitely can't. And I know why you can't. Okay, here we go, people. I found volume.
Do you sleep with one eye open?
In the toughest weeks,
I feel it and bleed like everybody else. Do you? Of course I do.
in the toughest job,
Does it sometimes take you a while to get this through your thick head?
Scott Morrison fights back.
You might need more than a miracle this time. You might need the second coming.
Well, I believe in that too.
On 60 Minutes, behind the scenes in the kitchen cabinet,
Watch out for the knives. Only from behind.
the Prime Minister launches his secret weapon.
I'm in. What would you say to your 16-year-old self?
Run!
But can Jenny Morrison swing the election
I actually felt sick to my stomach.
and save her husband?
Then you can go to Hawaii.
Carl.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Too soon. Too soon.
Sunday on 9.
Why are they using Jenny Morrison like that? Like she's going to rescue the Prime Minister's career. The whole thing was weird, right? Wasn't just me who thought Carl Stefanovic had this weird, I'm not really biased, but I'm biased moment of talking about knifing each other and what's been going on in the Hawaii comments. The whole thing was a bit weird. I hear that there was a ukulele involved and just really weird. But if you notice, they added in the little snipper of him praying and saying amen at the end. And I think that this is a moment that you need to absorb, that they're trying to normalize what they're doing. They're trying to make it sound like this is how everyone should be doing it, and it's fine that they don't actually leave the country, they just have to take the photos, and then that's fine. That's basically where we are. And I think that that's a really, really, really good point. Where we are is not healthy as a nation. It's just not. We can pretend like we are on some level playing field doing the right thing and all that kind of stuff. But par for the course, no. Why are they doing this? 60 Minutes needs to rethink its position, but not just 60 Minutes, other media suck-ups. This brings me to a weird moment with Peda Credlin, which I don't know why this is a thing. I don't know whether to laugh or cry about this one, because I'm trying to find where I put it and now I don't know. Nope, that's not it. Okay. I really cannot find it. It's not in my playlist. There we go. Here we go. Now, Peda Credlin says all sorts of strange things. She has always been a bit of a Tony Abbott, because she used to be his staffer, she's never really dropped it. But she sometimes crosses a line, and this is the line. Okay. Despite their faults, it's best to stick with the Liberals. What? We're not talking about like tiny little, whoopsie, got it wrong, maybe they're not. No, we're talking about full-on corruption here, lady. I just don't think you're willing to admit that it's super duper bad, and that you're a super duper out of your freaking mind. But okay, since we're here, let's talk about it. It's smart politics of Scott Morrison to stress that the coming election is not a referendum but a choice. It's a chance to pass judgment on his government. He insists but a contest between the two sides. You may want the government to punish the government, but please don't punish the country. Because to her, punishing the country would be to have a government that actually governs. It's a repugnant thought that this is what we have, and that Peda Credlin still thinks that she has some sway with the public. She does not. They can put Sky News wherever they want to. It's still a heaping pile of crap. Next story I think is interesting. This one is going to get really, really full on. Okay. One sec. What happened to this? I had it all lined up and then it just decided, hey, no, I hate you. That's what happens with these lineups. You have it all set up to be all pretty and then it's like, no. Okay. So here is what's really happening in the cabinet. Check this out.
Another bombshell in Canberra. Our political editor, Peter Van Onselen, has exclusive details tonight on how Scott Morrison has been poleaxed by his own cabinet, which now seems to have lost confidence in his judgment, and how the Prime Minister himself declared he was putting his leadership on the line, but still got rolled. This is hugely damaging after an already damaging 2 weeks of name-calling, backstabbing and witch hunts within the government. PVO joins me now live. Peter, one way...
For those of you who don't know, PVO has tried to redeem himself after he was caught, attacking Grace Tame, saying how she just should have not gone if she didn't smile politely and all that kind of stuff. So this is basically, why didn't you play nice? Now he's like, well, how can I make the public hate me a smidgen more? Well, funny thing you ask, Peter Van Onselen. Now you've got both sides hating you. Congrats, buddy. How does it feel to be a pariah for no good reason and having no morals at all? You absolute twat waffle. Ugh.
Way or another, is this enough to spell the end of Scott Morrison?
I wouldn't necessarily go that far, Sandra, but I tell you what, it is incredible.
No, I wouldn't say that at all, would you, Why would you say that? They're just my friends and their octane gets a little bit higher. Come on.
Incredibly damaging. I mean, we had his character before this being called into question by his own colleagues, calling him a liar, a fraud, a hypocrite, a horrible, horrible person, even a complete psycho. Now we know that the cabinet are questioning his political judgment, and that's the one big thing that he was regarded to really have a strong set of cards when it comes to. Take a look. After a week from hell, things are only getting worse for Scott Morrison. On Monday, his own cabinet turned on him. One senior minister telling me things erupted, all over a sneaky deal the PM hatched, trying to get his religious freedom bill through the parliament.
Wait. Let's not overlook that. They just added like one of these Hillsong moments in there. And they thought that was like normalizing us all to this. How weird is that? No, it's weird and it's creepy and it's wrong. It's wrong. Even if you're like, they're trying to normalize these people, and I swear to God, none of it is normal. I've never seen a Prime Minister do it quite like Scott Morrison. But this just tops the line. And they're not going to do anything with ICAC. Are you kidding me? Peda Van Onselen.
Exchange, he'd allowed debate on his now dead promise to set up a federal corruption watchdog, knowing full well it would go nowhere.
The Prime Minister tried to wedge Labor and ended up wedging himself.
This is a bill that I earnestly hoped would unite.
But we now know it's dividing his inner sanctum. Sydney MP Trent Zimmerman, for one, just can't stomach the Religious Freedom Bill.
It's an opportunity that I can't let go past. I could not live with myself if I didn't seek to address those issues.
He crossed the floor, and so did 4 other Liberals, voting with the crossbench and Labor on an amendment to protect transgender children. That sent the bill to the Senate. But instead of a showdown, it's all on ice, pending an inquiry. The Prime Minister began Monday's cabinet meeting by declaring he was putting his leadership on the line. This is hugely important because he got rolled, even when he had so much at stake. His own cabinet colleagues didn't trust his political judgment. Close Morrison confidant Stuart Robert argued for the PM in cabinet, but remained tight-lipped today.
Well, I guess I didn't see you in cabinet, PVO, and I did have a good look around the room.
I've clearly spoken to someone there, though. What does it mean that the Prime Minister got rolled in cabinet on that, if you like, political strategy?
Well, clearly I don't agree with you, and I was there, and you weren't.
Are you saying that didn't happen in cabinet?
I'm saying I don't discuss matters of cabinet confidentiality.
Communications Minister Paul Fletcher was one of those who argued forcefully against the Prime Minister. Another minister said in the meeting the Prime Minister's horse trading would cause more problems than it solves. One Liberal telling 10 News First, Scott Morrison was being too tricky by half. In the end, Cabinet rolled its Prime Minister, prompting one minister to say the PM looks rattled. Not surprising given he'd put his leadership on the line, and not even his own Cabinet backed his political judgment. One of the big reasons that the Cabinet was concerned about bringing the Integrity Commission information forward as legislation was because they didn't want retrospective laws to be put in place. In other words, that's a concern about their past conduct as a government being investigated by just such a body in the future. Now, we reached out to the Prime Minister's office. They gave us the same line that you heard there from Stuart Robert. They don't comment on Cabinet discussions.
It's not over yet. All right, Peter, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying, hey, we're super duper corrupt. We don't want to show you our hand. We just want to catch Labor doing stuff. That's basically what you take from that kind of posturing. But you can physically see the fear in the Prime Minister's face. You just catch that snippet and he's like, no, this isn't happening. He's terrified. Hence the whole ukulele thing and the 60 Minutes write-up, and either which way when you look at it, he is a cooked chicken. This ICAC inquiry is big. The fact that he could not get it because his cabinet was saying, look, they're going to retrofit this. They're going to make sure that you can look into us. So people were basically saying, if you do that, they're going to find out what's in our closet. So clearly they know it's bad. Oh yeah, Nick. This is to be a fly on the wall in Morrison's office after that. Let's hope Dutton took his phone with him. Yeah, this is the thing. Does anyone actually see Dutton making this move? Because I've wanted to. Oh, mercy, I do. Because I know that in a second Dutton would lose. Absolutely. He's just... This wasn't like a moment where people were like, is he a monster? Is he not a monster? Oh no, by and large the consensus is Dutton would be the absolute worst try. And if he did it this close to calling the election, they're gone skis. They don't even get a breath in to take in for this. And it was so glorious to watch the Prime Minister's face as he goes, I hoped it would unite people. Oh my God, you thought that something you did would unite people. Yeah, when has that ever happened, weirdo? That's not a thing that the Prime Minister has ever achieved. Not only has he not achieved uniting people, but he's actively in his bigot bill driven a wedge in his own party. If you have a look at what Trent Zimmerman did say, in his full speech, it was pretty incredible. I have to say, I'm not a Liberal backer, but some of them had speeches that were quite touching, even for someone that does not go to their political persuasion. You had to hear it, and to be there and hear it and experience it was pretty incredible. So for me personally, I think that it's time that we did look at what Dutton will do though. I think Dutton making the next move, he's counting numbers. The inside sources are definitely saying he's counting. Inside staffers are definitely saying, hey, no, he's counting the numbers and he's seeing if he can do the magic juju work to make it happen. And oh my God, it's on like Donkey Kong if that goes down. I am excited for this, but I'm more excited for the nation, because this is a sign that you can see collapsing. The media can't put out enough stories to sandbag this. This isn't like any other time. This is like when John Howard lost his seat. This is what you're kind of looking at. This is like this moment of, oh, this is like he's gone. But don't take my word for it. Take theirs. Listen to their panic talk. Look at the amount of interviews they're doing. Look at the puff pieces that they're putting out. The more time you're seeing, please like Scott Morrison, the more you can see that the internal polling is literally collapsing before your eyes. The moment you've got someone like Peda Credlin putting her career on the line, saying, hey, please don't damage, the country by voting for ALP. She's basically saying, this government's bad, I can't spin this. Let's make it sound like the other side is the bad side. This is a poor decision. A very, very poor decision of Peda Credlin, because now she attaches her credibility to Scott Morrison's. The two can't meet because they're at two odds of the spectrum. You have Peda Credlin, who believes in IVF and all that kind of stuff, and you have Scott Morrison that openly rallies against it. Like, there are things that Peda Credlin does where he's like, no, I'd rather not. So for her, it would have been very galling. Sorry. It's very clear she doesn't like Scott Morrison. But don't take my word for it. Listen to when she talks about him. She talks about him through gritted teeth. And that's a sign that it's not going to go well. Okay, next story. Now, okay. This one definitely got me up in arms. Now, why? Because this is the sort of language you should not have from anyone, let alone Josh Frydenberg. Okay. Arnold Block Liebler performed an honourable public service representing Josh Frydenberg. The ABL also represented a failed 2016 attempt to suppress a transcript of the Australian Federal Police interview in 2003. 2003. Frydenberg was the advisor. Oh, hold on. Why? It let me see this story before, now it won't. Okay, so it's not going to let me do it. So the AFP is investigating a major intelligence leak to the to Herald Sun columnist Andrew Bolt. Now, what's going to happen here is really, really bad. They're using this moment to attack Labor, and if you notice, ASIO is not coming out and saying anything, and ASIO will not back what Dutton or Josh Frydenberg or anyone else is saying on ALP links to China. But if you have a look at my Twitter, you would openly see that I definitely showed them that they have plenty of national security leaks that do create an issue for public record. And it's quite clear they do. And this is how the Liberals conduct themselves. Whenever they say, hey, look at Labor, it's really a chance for you to have a deeper look at what they're doing. And I'm definitely concerned. But on to a funny story. Okay, it's funny if you find we funny. I apparently do not. I just thought it was gross and I did not know what to do about it. Okay. Mystery Australian MP found asleep, denies soiling his pants. Now, I don't know who this is. I mean, do you want to know who this is? It's gross either which way when you look at it. Former Liberal Party Senator Cory Bittany has... Oh, hold on. Why is Chris Kenny playing? Social media to claim a mystery... Oh, I hit a button. So the kids would know I did that. Can you see that? No. Cory Bittany has taken to social media to claim a mystery coalition MP was found in his office in a pool of his own urine at 3:30 a.m. on Thursday. That's a time. Who was at the federal MP found comatose and soiled in his office last night when the Parliament was sitting, Mr. Bittany asks. After news.com.au dutifully commenced their grim task of getting to the bottom of this unsavoury rumour, we found the MP who knows how the rumour started and insisted no one lost control of their bladder. He didn't wet his pants, the Liberal MP said. There was no we that I'm aware of. He was just asleep in his office. Alright, can I stop there and tell you it's funny on so many levels that you're discussing a Liberal Member of Parliament with the background of the Engadine Macca's incident, which the Prime Minister can deny till he's blue in the face. It's still funny. And I mean, when something like this pops up, you can't help but think like a 5-year-old and then go, haha, this happened. Because they run around and pretend like they're better than everyone else. These are the people that typically, there's nothing, loads of people have incontinence issues, loads of people have different sort of issues. But for the Liberal Party, they treat people with disabilities appallingly. Hence why when they were told to do the NDIS properly, they did not. When they were told about access for certain people would need to be increased for funding, they did not. Every time they've had an opportunity to be decent human beings, they are not. So here's why I'm talking about it. The MP in question also confirmed, the reason I'm talking about it is because they do this stuff and they have no care for the community. So let's talk about one of them being disgusting in Parliament. The MP in question also confirmed the rumours were complete rubbish and said that he had not even been drinking. He simply fell asleep. In other words, they know who this is. Asked if Mr. Bittany's claim was accurate, the party whip Bert Van Manem said, strictly speaking, he didn't discuss whip matters. But the answer was no. What do you mean whip matters? That's a first... What? Now you're just going to make up phrases to suit the agenda? Oh, come on. No, you don't. No. That's not how words work. Oh, my God. Okay, it's not the first time an MP has been found asleep in the office in Parliament in sitting. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott famously had to be roused by the whip later in 2009 and even missed several votes in Parliament. I lay down, next thing I knew it was morning, he said. Former Liberal leader Malcolm Turnbull told Melbourne Radio that Mr Abbott was drunk. What? But there was nothing we could do. No, he was drunk. No, drunk, like drinky. No, we're paying for them to just sort of do this. Okay, cool. The whips tried to rouse him to get him down to the chamber to the vote, but they were unable to move him, so he missed out on the vote. Mr Turnbull said it was a pretty important vote too. That was Rudd's big cash flush after the GFC. I was arguing we did not need to spend that much money that quickly. In other words, they lost this vote because drunks, just like Barnaby Joyce and whoever else, pretend like this is how they should conduct themselves at their workplace. No other workplace could you do this. I was disappointed, and I can't remember anyone else missing a vote because they were too drunk to get into the chamber. But the fact that Tony Abbott has fessed up to it, he knows it was an error or whatever. In other words, they admit to it afterwards. He has acknowledged it, and that is good. It is clearly not acceptable or admirable in any way. Thursday's incident followed a marathon sitting in Parliament for nearly 24 hours to pass the government's religious freedom bill. Thank God that did not pass. And I mean, I think we're all thankful that thing did not move. Okay. Okay. Next one is, I'm not really sure how to feel about Leah Sales leaving after the next federal election. She has asked some good questions, but it begs to differ if her questions were good and relevant for the topics. She does favour the LNP at times, I find. And that's what bothers me.
Before we go tonight, I wanted you to hear some news from me personally, and it's that I've asked my ABC bosses to allow me to step down from anchoring 7:30 later this year, once the federal election's over. I was appointed to the job on the 3rd of December 2010, so this is my 12th year in the seat. That was 5 Prime Ministers ago. It was so long ago that Donald Trump was just a guy with a bad orange hairdo hosting The Apprentice. There's nothing wrong, other than I just feel a strong sense of it being time to pass the baton to the next runner in the race and to take a break. And the end of an election cycle feels like a good time to move on to something new at the ABC. I hope it's been obvious that I've always approached this job with one goal, and that is to ask frank questions of people in power without fear or favour that a fair-minded, reasonable person with some common sense watching at home might like to ask if they were sitting in my position. I've tried to shut down wafflers, call out bullshit, hold powerful people to account, expose lies, incompetence and exaggeration.
Is it because she's like leaving that she finally felt that she could use that word? It's pretty cool that she did it.
In all political parties and on all issues, and present facts even when they're unpopular or inconvenient. I have truly tried my absolute hardest on behalf of you at home to do that every single time I've sat at the desk. Anchoring 7:30 has been the most amazing job, and I'll never stop being grateful for the opportunities it's given me, all the incredible people that I've interviewed. The celebrities come and go, but you never forget people like Matthew Lowe, whose wife was killed in the Dreamworld roller coaster accident, and who somehow found the strength down the track to do an interview to try to ensure that no other family would ever have to go through what his did. And people like Matthew are the ones who really stick with you. Every time you interview somebody whose life's been devastated, you feel terrified by what life has dished up to them, and incredibly humbled by how they've met that with strength and clarity and dignity, and you just don't forget it. You do, of course, remember some of the celebrities. Interviewing Paul McCartney and getting a hug from him is one of the best days of my life. In all the years I've anchored, I've never had more viewers come up to me in public than after that interview to say how much joy it gave them. And it was so beautiful that people felt like they had shared in that experience with me. While it's truly been an unbelievable privilege to host 7:30, it's also a demanding job that comes with enormous responsibility and pressure and scrutiny. Anchoring a nightly current affairs show for so long has been a marathon, but every day it is a sprint as well. When I first started, I didn't have children, and now I have 2 boys aged 10 and 8, and they've only ever known their mum at work 4 nights a week. They want me home with them before 8:30 p.m, and I don't think that's too much for 2 little boys to ask, and they're 2 beautiful little boys too. So many viewers come up to me in public, write to me, send me messages on social media, and I want to say thank you to every single one of you. The ABC is so often under fire, and it means a lot to all of us to know that the public supports what we do. The team at 7:30 is
I just want to interrupt that for a moment. Of course, ABC is under constant cuts, and it goes through this excruciating moment where it is hacked at quite a lot. And it's obvious that it is. Leah is right. But I think that she tipped some of her political capital in by pandering to some of the LMP's weirdness. Can I truly say that? It is sad to see, someone retire. Well, she's still going to work at the ABC, just not in the same capacity.
Paralleled in the media, and I could not have more admiration or more gratitude for what they all do. It's an incredibly important program. There is no other show that does what 7:30 does night after night. I am so proud of what our team does, and I know the program is going to keep going from strength to strength, as it always has. I feel overwhelmed when I think of all the things that working at 7:30 has given me, and I'm looking forward to having a good break and then figuring out what I do next at the ABC. I'm really thankful to my ABC bosses over the years, and my colleagues, our viewers, and the people who've had the courage to trust us with their stories. Thank you, and I'll be around for a while yet, so please keep watching, my friends. See you on Monday. Good night.
Okay, that's really sad. That really is sad. She seemed like she was close to tears. I think it's going to mean a different direction. Here's the thing, that they are talking about taking Lisa Wilkins from a show that she currently does, I think on Channel 10, and they're going to fit her in, might be 9, and she does a breakfast thing. She used to do it with Carl, and then I think she moved over to 10. And they want to fit more people that fit the narrative of the LMP, but it's good to know that. Well, I'm hoping that they won't put her in a position where they've already fitted out her job before she leaves, which means that it'll be an LMP appointee, which means like the Ida Buttrose one, it'll be terrible. It's a terrible idea. If you don't know, Ida Buttrose did indeed do a lot of political campaigning for the Liberal Party. So it's not a surprise that they use that capital on her. Okay, so the next story is a little bit sad. Okay, so this is going to be talking about in Parliament. We're not just talking about small little things here where they did this and they didn't know what they were doing. Much like the insurrection in the United States, they know exactly what they are doing. But who did it? I don't know. On Tuesday, it stepped up promotion for an extreme right-wing movement by sections of the political establishment and ruling elite found its darkest expression yet. Craig Kelly, prominent MP, who, of course it was, who resigned from the Liberal National Coalition government last year, ushered in 6 far-right activists. This guy is like a Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you don't know who she is, you're not paying attention. And Craig Kelly is definitely as stupid as Marjorie Taylor Greene. He says the same sort of dumb stuff. He's not informed. He doesn't take any moment to learn anything new at any point in his life, which is sad because it's sadder for our nation that we're dealing with idiots. Okay, Craig Kelly, prominent MP who resigned from the Liberal coalition government last year, ushered 6 far-right activists into the federal parliament building and cloistered them into his office. They presented a letter outlining a series of demands, because of course they did, for an immediate end to the handful of COVID restrictions, because of course they did. That remain including limited vaccine mandates. Kelly declared that he would hand the documents directly to his former leader, Prime Minister Scott Morrison. This comes off the back, can I just quickly interject, of the Prime Minister and him having this stoush over what should be done. And now Clive Palmer is putting out advertisements saying, well, Craig Kelly could be a Prime Minister. No, he can't. You're an idiot, Clive. No, he can't. Forget the fact that you can't run your companies properly, clean up the, nickel refinery properly. Forget the fact that you can't build the Titanic or pay your workers. Forget the fact that you sued the Western Australian government and lost. Forget the fact that last federal election you did not get an iota of a seat. In fact, you're losing traction fast. And even your big dollars will not suffice this next parliamentary voting time. But let's be clear, absolutely clear with you, Mr. Palmer. You want to go around spreading your extremists onto the public. I can guarantee you this isn't like a weird hydroxychloroquine pill that you tried to distribute to the public that you bought in mass when you thought it would fix COVID rather than following the science. This isn't like that. No. You know why? Because people are better than that here. We are not little Americans that you can manipulate into some weird thing that you want to be. It's not possible. If you want that, go to the United States. Do what Rupert Murdoch did. Trash their civil liberties and pretend like you're all about freedom when really you're about control. I would really hope Mr. Palmer would stop. I hope he faces jail time for what he did in the nickel refinery and the fact that he ran his cousin out of the country, very higgledy-piggledy in a way, and says that he doesn't know where he is, the operator of said company. Look, if you were looking for something stupid to do, why don't you invest in another weird company that Forrest Twiggy is involved in? I'm sure the two of you can do something weird together. You're very strange people. But don't enter the politics arena. You might have thought it was funny when you were in politics to rock up in a different car every day and pretend like you knew what you were talking about for everyday Australians. But like Pauline Hanson, you are a sellout, and any time you are proven to be a sellout, you go back to being a recluse and pretending like you're all about the people. No, Clive Palmer, it was never about the people. You didn't want the freedom to go to WA for everyone. You just wanted it for you. And then you piggybacked it and used the Prime Minister's money and backing to help that. When the Prime Minister no longer couldn't be seen with you, you wanted to run away with your tail between your legs, but it was too late. The paperwork was filed, you lost. And then you had to pay damages. Boo-hoo, so sad. Stop messing with us. We are not your little playthings. We are people of our own autonomy, and we choose not to be influenced by an idiot. These extremists are dangerous. For one, this is how stochastic terrorism starts. If you don't know what that is, I would invite you to look it up in a dictionary. It's where one person says a word and it can incite someone to do something very violent. These are the sort of Looney Tunes you're inviting onto our elected members of Parliament. I don't have to like Scott Morrison, but I don't want him dead either. It's appalling that we're even at this point where you think that this is an acceptable way for one of your MPs to behave. And I hope Craig Kelly loses his seat, and I hope to God I never see your face again. Oh my God, build your Titanic 2, sail away, and do not darken our people's doorstep again. I do not want to hear your little whiny bitchy voice telling everyone how you know things. You don't know crap. You would sell your soul if it meant a vote for you. You have no morals. If you have morals, you would have realized that you have about 20 comorbidities in the middle of a freaking pandemic. You know that this thing could have killed you, right? This thing, you probably have an island somewhere. You're probably sitting pretty. But I got the crazy disease. And it absolutely could have killed me. Absolutely. My lungs still don't breathe the same way. But that's right, you know, you're good, right? You think that everyone should be put out to that. I'm not even 40. And that almost got me. Can you imagine what that did to the elderly? Can you? No. Or children. Really little babies. You insane lunatic. Get the hell out of our politics. Anyway, there's my little screed gone. Sorry, people. I just think that Clive Palmer is the type of human that needs calling out when it's appropriate. And I will address that. The reason I want to address it is because this is the Americanization that they want. And they're chomping at the bit to get it. They are chomping at the bit to be as stupid and as asinine as them. And I'm doing my level best to avoid this level of stupidity. This convoy to Canberra is another sign that we aren't going forwards, we are going quickly backwards. It is not an if, but, or a maybe. That group with pink eye definitely is not part of the top food chain, if you know what I'm saying. I definitely think their IQ levels need checking. If you need to say at some point, hey, you know that kid you brought with you, take it with you. Do not just leave it there. Insanity. And I can bet you funded a good portion of that, Mr. Palmer. You idiot. Stupid. Why do we have to put up with these idiots? Okay, the 6 weeks were brought in a representative of the Freedom Convoy that held its protest in Canberra. There we go. The national capital this week. Small gathering have been given outsized coverage of the corporate media and are modelled on a similar far-right mobilisation in Canada and New Zealand and elsewhere. That there tells you that they're part of the Looney Tune crew. And I mean, if you remember, I think it was like a week ago where they had Canberra and they were waving Trump flags. You idiots rocked up to Canberra. No, capital. Think it through. Scott Morrison is our leader. He rocked up with Trump flags. Absorb that information first. But stay with me. Stay with me. You didn't just rock up with Trump flags. No, you weren't done. Why would you be done? It would have been the smart point to stop. No. You rocked up with an old president that no longer runs the United States. Couldn't for the life of you have a normal conversation. I, in fact, know someone that did a conversation with one of you idiots, and it was so unable to be taken and used in a video because it was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Now, not just a little, it was a lot. But let's fast forward to this weird little Canberra thing that you did. Okay, if you think that there is a weird bio dart getting you with a Moderna vaccine rather than an actual wasp, sure, seems legit. Why would you go there again? See, here's where I'm going to interject. Who had the dart then? Idiots. Yous all had phones. No one could say quite who had it. Just that it supposedly happened. Everyone had a phone on them. Everyone was recording this, and no one has any footage of anyone shooting anyone with a weird Moderna dart. Just a weird food for thought moment. Stop, absorb the stupidity that you put out there. Oh my God, why am I addressing that? Because this is who we are now. That's who we are now, people. We are the sort of idiots that wake up in the morning and rather than put one sock at a time, we go and make up weird stuff like a dart hitting someone in the neck rather than a wasp, which is way more logical. I heard all sorts of theories about this one. This one's interesting. This one I love the most. What if they were set up, right? I love this. What if they were set up for someone to say this to show how stupid they were? What if the person who said this, because if you notice that it was underneath the Convoy to Canberra label, I couldn't actually see the person's name who said it. What if they were set up to say the stupidest thing you could hear, repeat it, and see who believed it? And it worked. What if they did that? I mean, it's... No. We are not... No. That's a weird thought, right? You thought it was weird too? No. It's weird. The whole thing's weird. Why would you do this? At what point were you like, I'm going to say something really crazy and out there, and I'll have no video evidence to back it up. But wait, I'm not done yet. I'm going to convince a crowd that were there too that it really did happen. So the same people that were there, I'm going to convince them that no, this really did happen. How do you get to the point where you convince some people that were physically there, standing around you, that a Moderna dart hit you? That's some next level gaslighting. No, it's funny on so many levels, but frightening at how quickly you bought that story. Someone just shot people with Moderna darts? That's hilarious. And if you don't know how to find a toilet, the world is not your toilet. And pink eye is a very serious condition. Please go and seek medical advice if you do have it. I've made a considerable amount of jokes about that, but I've never had it. I think it's because I like my eyes so much, because I've always had these weird turns in them. And I had an eye operation when I was little. So I've always looked at my eyes and gone, no, I'm not mucking around with them. You know, if something bad happens, I'm going to take it seriously. Not these idiots, no. They go to the bathroom where they want to and they make each other sick. Weirdos. Okay. Commentary in the press has highlighted Kelly's supposed eccentricity and the freak show character of the visit. But it is a serious warning to the working class. Individuals playing a leading role in a fantastic movement heavily associated with threats of political violence. Yeah, didn't some dude have a gun in his car and told to leave? Wasn't this like part of the thing that they were like, we got a gun and we're just going to hang around here? Like, dude, you get... At what point were you around your own people and thought, I know, I'll bring a gun loaded in my boot? You were around your own people. Who was going to be scaring you? Are you that man, that weirdo that just decided, I'm going to be with people I trust. I trust them so much there's a gun in my boot. You can't make this stuff up. It's comedy gold. I'm telling you, there is going to be a decade of this. Of idiots gone wild. If you haven't seen it, these are the same people that are like soft citizens, and have a look at the stuff they say. I think our courts are going to be overrun with people who think laws don't apply to them, because there was a clear speech at these things that were saying exactly that. Laws don't apply to them. They literally believe that laws don't apply to them, and they just are traveling on the road. They don't need driver's license. They don't need normal things that you do. They don't need to pay fines because they did not consent to them. They can't be arrested because you didn't say the magical words, do you consent? Yeah, that's what these people are. That's the speeches they gave. I watched it. It was funny. I want to show you how crazy they are, but why, when I can tell you about it, laugh about it along the way? And here's the best part. I can make fun of how stupid we now look. On an international level, we have Americans messaging me going, do you own these people? Where did they come from? How come we're not doing this? The Americans openly acknowledge that they're the first ones to do something stupid. That's true. They do. They own it. I had someone from a news outlet called TYT, and I've regularly engaged in their comment section, and they were like, how did you end up with these weirdos? This is normally us. I'm like, I know, right? This is nuts. I now have something to talk about on my side of the pond where it's gotten just as weird. It's weird. And it really was weird. I don't know what to do. I had people, I heard that there were people walking around and they were getting real interviews, like with real journalists, and they can't use the footage. It was too extreme. This is why I'm so reluctant to show it, because once you have that earworm in your ear, it's hard to get it out, and it's terrible. Okay. Without any apparent intent to block them into government, Labor, or the intelligence agencies. Among Kelly's guests was Simon Byklov. He's a leader of a small Australian Cossack group and combined support for the Russian state and hardline of Australian nationalism. Byklov is spoken to alongside Australian Representative Golden Dawn, the Greek neo-Nazi organisation, and is publicly associated with Jim Salem, leader of the Australian First Party. Why? Why is this a thing? Oh, I remember Kim Volga. I remember calling her that. I think it's Vuga or something. I called her vulgar because everything that came out of her mouth was vulgar and gross, and everything that just sort of, gee, they die off fast. You never hear of Milo Yiannopoulos anymore, or any of those other weirdos. They die off fast. There's like this quick cycle. They need to cycle them in, and they cycle out, and you're like, fuck. And I have the feeling the same will happen with like Joe Rogan and many others. Because once they're in, unless they're like an Alex Jones fixture, they can't really sustain the level of crazy. And here's the thing, Alex Jones openly says of what he said in open court documents in a trial to get access to his children. He said it was an act. Yeah, telling people frogs are going gay and that it's the left's fault that we're making them gay is all an act. No, Mr. Jones, I think you're really crazy, but I think you know that you look really crazy, so you say really crazy things. I do not think that you were sane on any level, and it was weird that you did it. Do I think that you are going to keep doing it? Absolutely. It's a big money maker for you and Joe Rogan and many of the grifters on that side, the Ben Shapiros and the weirdos on that side. But it dies out quickly. Byklov has recently been the subject of a firearm protection order, an uncommon measure imposed by the New South Wales Police Commissioner, banning an individual from possessing a gun or ammunition. That's interesting. And granting police wide-ranging powers to search infringements. He is standing as an independent candidate. Oh, he wants to run for the seat of Strathfield in the upcoming Sydney by-election and has been endorsed by Craig Kelly. Hey, did he win that? Does anyone know if he won that? Hey, can someone like look that crap up? Because did he? No, I think we would have heard about it by now if some like extreme fascist won this. Like, we would have, right? I didn't know that this dude was like openly, like seriously gonna run. See, they do this in the States. They don't actually legislate. They just say dumb things and then they go, yay, we're governing. They're absolute lunatics. It's hilarious on one part, but on a whole other part, it ruins democracy. Another one of the guests was Cindy Roberts. She was present at the December protest when other far-right activists allegedly set fire to the entrance of Old Parliament House. Did they really? Last week, Roberts posted footage taken outside the Governor-General's home in which she declared, "Your time is now coming. It's the gallows, it's the gallows, it's the gallows," in comments apparently directed at Morrison. You're allowed to say crap like that? And it's legal? Like I get it. They're banning him from... No? Why is this legal? Explain this to me. This is insane. These individuals who must be well known to the intelligence agencies, they are hardly discreet about their politics. Are they his medals? These are the... whose medal is he wearing? Did he serve in the armed forces, or is he wearing a relative? What is that patch? What are those patches? I need to know about this guy. This guy's really creepy. You know, when you look at people, you're like, I don't want to meet that guy in an alley. Hey, what can you tell me about this guy? So I'm going to do some background on this guy, because the fact that he can't own a gun, the fact that he's now on some big watch list, the fact that he's wearing weird medals and has these weird cross things on him, I don't know what they are. And he's definitely got the feel for one of these right-wing terrorists. The timing of this makes an entrance of such forces into Parliament even more significant. The government and the entire political establishment are unprecedented crisis. Decades long of hostility in major parties and their program of social austerity has been greatly intensified by mass oppression. Let it rip pandemic policies of the past 2 months, which overturned previously successful public health measures and have resulted into an unprecedented COVID surge. Okay, so hold on. They think that's what made these crazies? No. Extremists come even when things are great. And how do you know that? Because even the well-oiled society will still have an element of crazy to it. This fine, upstanding weirdo is just one of many that sleeps in the shadows. And when it suits their agenda, they pop out and play peekaboo with us. And then they end up being super duper weird. And you never ever know what to do or to say. You're kind of like, oh, this is new. Morrison's polling results have been the lowest of his prime ministership. His ability to survive until the next federal election, due to be held in May, has been called into question by the eruption of factional warfare within the coalition government. Elements of the coalition have vocally opposed minimal vaccine mandates, with a backbench revolt on the issue stymieing the government's ability to pass any legislation late last year. Now, I don't think... You got to think we've always had an element of crazy. You got to think long before the pandemic, you had weirdos like Pauline Hanson appear and pretend like they're all about Australians and they'd say incredibly racist, horrible things. And then you'd have her supporters that were equally vile. So do not take this as like an ad hoc This is like the moment that they're all being set free. I think that that's an easy and divisive way of saying that things aren't going great, so here's the crazies unleashed on you. No. What I really think that this is a sign of is that we're in a moment that we've never felt before. And in that moment, we look at any signs of discontentment and go, well, that's never been done before. It has. It has. In fact, one would argue that there is less violence and stuff since the pandemic. In fact, crime rates are quite low. So to insist that a pandemic is increasing violence is not accurate. But let me go one step further. These people were always there, waiting in the shadows until a moment where they could be politically opportunistic to do what they're doing. But they were always there. It is under these conditions a breakdown of the two-party parliamentary system that extreme right-wing forces are being brought forward. No, I want to dispute that. Can I truly say I don't think it's the two-party preferred. You know what I really think it is? Every once in a while, a crazy gets a gun and then they say stupid things. And then they're told, hey, you can't have a gun. Why would you have a gun? And why are you on a watch list? Do you think a guy that's on an open watch list should be running for parliament? No. But do you think he'll last long? No. Pauline Hanson is holding on by a big gritted teeth. If you have a look, she lost 10 points in the Queensland state election. So wherever this guy thinks that he's going to just pop up from nowhere is going to be interesting. She had years of political capital of being part of the established Liberal Party. This guy appears from nowhere, says extreme right-wing things, and then poses herself as the one and only. This is what I want to say is political opportunism. They see what happens in the States and they go, let's jump on that bandwagon, shall we? Have a look at what's happening to Matt Gaetz right now. Do you know that he's under investigation for possibly engaging in issues with children? Yeah, these people never ever last long in our cycles. There's a reason, and his mate Joel Greenberg is already sitting in a jail, and he was a tax collector in the state of Florida for the exact same thing, and it sounds like they were using online payments to pay for them. The UAP Kelly preferences will go to the LNP. It definitely will. It's the way that Palmer did it last time. They are harnessing extreme right-wing vote, and the bell-ends in Canberra yesterday are clueless. Then Morrison says it's not my fault, it's the states. See, that there shows you that it has a way of infecting us in a really, really dangerous way. And the only one that it helps to benefit are the Conservatives. And they will find any moment of the very worst of us to do the very worst. These people aren't interested in any meaningful moment. And the LNP absolutely will buy the capital that that Clive Palmer's party bring, or Pauline Hanson's party. They will say publicly that they oppose this stuff, but privately they're all for it. But they can't say this publicly because it's too on the nose. But they're willing to take the preferences from these parties, and it's appalling. Many of the positions on the pandemic dovetail directly with those ruling elite. Kelly's guests, for instance, included a demand that the state borders never be closed again, one of the central complaints of the corporate media throughout the pandemic. The current protests beginning late last year, the initial participants were supporters of the sovereign citizen conspiracy theories. Now, if you haven't seen the sovereign citizen movement, I invite you to have a look into them, because their language is very, how do you say it without saying it like directly? It's literally a movement that believes that unless you're like an Uber driver and you're engaging in a form of commerce, they believe that they're the only people who need a driver's license. They believe that the magic words of I don't consent to be arrested means that the police can't arrest you. I really want to be kind and say that this is more of a mental health struggle, but it's not. This is a common sense struggle. Say, for instance, you're pulled over by the police. You do not have to commit a crime to need to hand over your driver's license. That is a weird theory someone made up, that you needed to be charged with a crime to hand over your driver's license. If you are driving that vehicle, you absolutely have to hand over your driver's license, no matter what a self-citizen runs around and tells you. And do hand it over when you are asked. Do not fight it there. Do it in the courtroom where you hire a lawyer and they will represent you. And no, you cannot represent yourself as a lawyer. I've seen it go badly. Watch the Zoom court appearances. They're funny and stupid all at the same time. And I say this to these self-citizens that are serious. I'm related to one. Anti-vaxxer, extreme right wing, says silly things. So it's not as if I'm coming from a place where I want you to be harmed. I want you safe, and I want the law to work the way it should. Fortunately, that's not how this thing is playing out, and it's quite painful. I also have a friend of mine in a town I used to live, gun-ho, tell me that I am just a sheep following the laws of the land. Yeah, because, you know, not following the laws ends so well for people. How about we give that one a go? Okay. So they got this rhetoric that they can do whatever they please, including violate basic public health measures during a pandemic. Protesters included long-standing right-wingers, as well as a layer of Aboriginal nationalists. See, these Aboriginal people thought that they were regaining something, when all they were doing is being part of a far-right movement that did them a lot of harm. And it was filled with a lot of misinformation opposing vaccines, contributing to the spread of COVID in Aboriginal communities, and their leading members died of coronavirus in December. This is sad. The fire-lit old Parliament House was not the aberration of the sovereign citizen groups that erroneously believe that it is a seat of government, though it has not been there for more than 30 years. Videos they posted to social media hinted at the plot to storm the building, because Americans do this stuff and they think this is how you get shit done. No. For anyone who thinks that this is a great idea, right? This is why that there are now fences around these places. All you're going to see is more laws to curtail people like you. And people like me that would like access to our parliamentarians properly will not get that. Even more so now. People like me that just wants to have a normal civil discussion with them cannot, because you engage in this National Lampoon's moment. It's stupid and asinine that you would pretend like you're being the sovereign citizen fighting for people's rights. You want to fight for people's rights, rock up to a rally and fight for children to be educated properly. That would be a good cause. Fight for our environment that our children will live in. That would be a good cause. I'm not here to tell you what the good causes are, but I definitely think those are two good causes you could set your mind to. But this whole idea that the pandemic is some weird way to control you is bizarre. And this isn't the first time in history where measures had to be taken to protect you from yourselves. Do you think they just went one day, hey, I think we should put helmets on those people riding bikes? No, idiots were hurt, therefore they put helmets on them. Not because everyone rode bikes like idiots, it's because the ones who were engaging in dangerous behaviour needed protection. You're not wearing a seatbelt because you drive like a pro. You're wearing a seatbelt because people crashed and accidents happen. See, it's not difficult. You realise why you're doing it and it all makes sense. You put your belt on, you get your driver's licence, because you don't want people driving in a car that weren't licensed, right? You wouldn't want, I don't know, a 10-year-old to go, hey, I don't need a licence, I'm not commencing any commerce. See, it sounds a bit stupid, doesn't it? It's weird. But, you know, I digress. And that's what they're doing. Okay. And they fight between themselves, and it's terrible. The protests then turned to the current parliament, establishing an encampment outside of it. It was dismantled last week, and the demonstrators largely out of town. Canberra showground. They have held several protests at the parliament. This week, resumed sittings. Gatherings have been attended by a few thousand people, with the Freedom Convoy arriving on Tuesday. Other right-wing groups are involved, including the Canberra chapter, the Proud Boys, because why not? Because you got to have idiots, you know, come into. The Proud Boys were behind the insurrection in the United States. If you don't know that, well, we're not doing things right. And you know, they think that everything's tyranny and everything's out to get them. The protesters clearly modelled a similar movement, including the Freedom Convoy, which precedes the Canadian Parliament for almost 2 weeks, and then attempted to coup led by Donald Trump, trying to overturn the US election. As in the case internationally, the fascist forces are backed and encouraged by sections of the political establishment. Because of course they are. These idiots don't care. Craig Kelly was a member of government not even a year ago, and it's an accident waiting to happen. They're trying to cling on to the people that would vote for Craig Kelly, as well as the people who know that Craig Kelly is wrong. And that's where the Liberal Party is at a juxtaposition with itself. And sorry, there's something up on my throat. It's getting really scratchy. And that Craig Kelly movement is ending badly. But I've spent way too much time jibber-jabbering on that story, and there's so much more to get to. Okay. There is a Albo talking about national security. This is important. Check this out.
At the moment. I understand the government's desperate for distractions at the moment, but I say to them that national security is too important. This is what the Director General said. It is critical we do not let fear of foreign interference undermine stakeholder engagement or stoke community division. Were this to happen, it would perversely have the same corrosive impact on our democracy as foreign interference itself. That's a warning from the Director General of ASIO in his...
Now, ASIO is underneath Peda Dutton, and even he's warning, hey, this is not great. And you know that if they're sending out, you know, big signals, it's not driving with the Peda Dutton message. But if you're unsure just of how toxic it's going to get, they're not done. They're not done with this story, not by a long shot.
Speech.
in the pan like that, and then quickly.
I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened. It just kept going. That's what happens when you don't know how to work technology. It just goes horribly wrong. Okay, now, I know most of you don't do the whole TikTok thing. It's weird that this come from my mother, actually. She's the one who sent me this little gem with Eric Betts.
All right.
Labor is under no obligation to pull the Prime Minister out of messes of his own political making. And if the Prime Minister could not, after 3.5 years, draft a bill that had enough support of stakeholders outside the House and people within the House, then that is on him.
Labor deserves the backfire.
All right.
Labor is under no obligation to pull the Prime Minister out of messes of his own political making. And if the Prime Minister could not, after 3.5 years, draft a bill that had enough support of stakeholders outside the House and people within the House, then that is on him.
Labor deserves the backfire.
All right.
Labor.
So that is a very telling situation. We're at this point where we have the Liberals pretending like ALP is this big risk to national security, and then you have Eric Betts going in saying, hey, let's just throw anything we can and we'll see if we can blame Labor for everything. Labor is under no obligation to dig out the hole that Scott Morrison has made. If he has made this bed, he needs to lay in it a little while longer. At least until the election is called and he is kicked out of office. I am under no thought that this leader is the person that anyone should have had around. And here's the thing, right? I want it clear that it is not Labor's job to fix whatever Scott Morrison buggers up. If he brings a bigger bill for the Parliament, that's his bill. It's not up for Labor to fix it. It's not even up to Labor to pretend like they should have to go along with the rhetoric of the government of the day, like they're fully supportive. No. Labor's job is to oppose, and that's exactly what they did. They not only opposed it, they put in amendments and said, no, this is terrible. Why would you write something like this? What is wrong with you? But not in the sense of Tony Abbott, where he was just the Mr. No guy. Where everything that Julie Gillard had, he was like, no, just not a thing. And that's all he was known for. He wasn't known for any political gain for being part of government. He was just known for just saying no, which is a whole different position of what an opposition is supposed to be. Then there's this story. Hold on. So there's corruption, and then there's this level of corruption. So Scott Morrison's Hillsong mate, Leah Coleman, an alleged fraudster and crook set to break $100 million in government contracts. They can't help themselves. In 2020, I wrote that Scott Morrison's Hillsong mate, Leah Coleman, was awarded $43 million in government contracts, and I can now report that the amount for the government contracts now stands at $94.9 million since 2016. Scott Morrison and others in government have accelerated the fraud and theft of government assets before they were kicked out of government. Now that's an important moment. This is why we can't keep them. They're rorting everything that they can. They would sell their own mothers if they had the opportunity. They were an appalling group. This is the only short article, but one of the most powerful, as it tells you everything you need to know about why Scott Morrison and the government are so scared of a federal independent body like ICAC. In September 2020, I published an article titled Scott Morrison's Hillsong mate, Leah Coleman, who has allegations of fraud and bribery against him, was given $42 million in government grants, which starts off. Leah Coleman, who is a former Hillsong churchgoer, of course, executive and close friend of the Prime Minister, of course, had numerous allegations of fraud made against him, of course, because that's how this government works, of course, that it's all bad. And over the last 15 years, including attempted bribery, and yet his company, Servgate Australia, has still been managed to award 43 million in government contracts since 2015. During the same period, Servgate Australia was being awarded 43 million in contracts due to the strong business relations. Hold on, I just lost my place. Strong business relations with decision makers at very high levels, including ministers. At their website say Scott Morrison was appointed Treasurer in 2015 and then became Prime Minister in August 2018. So, was Scott Morrison involved in any way? Servgate in Australia is now registered as tax-free charity because of course it is, because the rort doesn't end there. They got to have like tax-free charity exemptions, and to say the least, where they don't seem to do much work except a percentage off the top and then subcontract the real work out to companies. This has been exposed in an article in The Guardian, but we'll get back to that in a minute because we should look at Leah Coleman's past handiwork of fraud, bribery and allegations when he was at Hillsong Church, an organisation called out Many Rivers, which is also a registered tax-free charity. Okay, the latest update done by Twitter user Sucks Hypocrisy, who crunched the numbers as per below. The government AusTender website below is a screen grab of the latest contracts Servgate received. There are 4 contracts from the Department of Defence, in which Peda Dutton is now Minister for, which I think is important because Dutton seems to be whoever there is a major government fraud. It is reported that the Construct International, which had 8 million in the bank in 2017, but it wanted contracts to run the Nauru Detention Centre. Slippery Pete, yeah, I remember that. It was terrible. Those contracts that they awarded to hold on to. I think this is why they've never let them people go either. It's made the friends of Scott Morrison a lot of money. Was the Immigration Minister made 101 million profit for the last 12 months on looking after less than 200 people. Well, let's get back to Servgate. Here is what it has managed to accrue. Check out this. It won't let me highlight that amount. But here's some really big value money that they're talking about. In total, that's what they've managed to grab. Lee Coleman is speaking of the support of the controversial Hillsong Superchurch in Sydney, where he identified himself as a local resident. The proposed church failed to attract community support and was withdrawn. Vera Coleman is seated at the bottom left. Between Servgate and Hillsong Church and Morrison's other mates, there must be well over 200 million in taxpayers' money floating out of the public purse. I normally would start publishing around mid-January, but I'm late this year. I've been working on another essential media project, which I'll announce soon. Please use Twitter, Facebook and other buttons to promote this article. Kangaroo Court of Australia is an independent website. So what I want to point out here is that these things are definitely going on. And as we're ramping up to this election cycle, I don't want to hear the ALP fighting with the Greens, and I don't want to hear the Greens fighting with the ALP. Either which way, it's bad. We're going to need one another to get rid of this very appalling group, the LNP. It's loads of people do not see what we're looking at. What do I mean when I say that? I mean, they don't see what we see. They see friends doing friends deals and that sort of thing. So we're going to seriously need to help one another get through this cycle. But I want you to know it has been another excellent week. Seeing you guys, talking to you, interacting with you on a great level. I think we are up for an uphill battle next election. And I think that we're in really big trouble. So as I close off tonight, I want you to know I 110% think this government has got to go. But don't take my word for it, take theirs. They're openly saying that Scott Morrison is not a leader. He's a psycho and he's not fit. He doesn't care about anything other than his photo ops. So that'll do it for this week. I hope everyone has a wonderful week and I hope to catch you next week for This Week in Politics. Catch you next Sunday, same time, same place. Hopefully you'll join me here. Thank you. Bye guys.